Good morning, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. Be in Psalm 120 is where we'll start this morning. Another beautiful day to be in the house of the Lord. Of course, it's always an honor and privilege to be able to come to His house and gather together, be in His Spirit, in the presence of His Spirit, be in His house, be called His children, call Him Father. Again, we'll be starting in Psalm 120 this morning. In my distress, I cried unto the Lord, and He heard me. What kind of comfort do we have knowing that we have a Father that when we cry out to Him and we're in trouble, He hears? He already knew where we were at, but when we cry out, we just have that much more of His attention. Deliver my soul, O Lord, from lying lips and from a deceitful tongue. So, the author of this psalm here is crying out, saying, save my soul from these people that are lying against me, that are being deceitful, that have spoken evil against me, without a cause. What shall be given unto thee, or what shall be done unto thee, thou false tongue? Sharp arrows of the mighty with coals of juniper. So he's saying, here that these lying tongues need to be struck down with sharp arrows, and coals of juniper, just really hot, fast-burning coals. Woe is me that I sojourn in Meshech, that I dwell in the tents of Kedar. My soul hath long dwelt with him that hateth peace. So he's found himself in a place here where there's people that are liars, they're deceivers, they're evil people that hate peace, they're war, that like fighting and things, violence. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. So, this is something, we have to keep our heads up nowadays because, all this, the way societies went, that anytime you speak the truth or speak peace, they try to bring war against you. They try to say you're in the wrong for saying the truth because it hurts their feelings or whatever it may be the case. But, we have a lot of that in our society now. It's awesome how this word, was written down thousands of years ago and is still exactly on point today. That it's not changed, it's not deviated, it's not at all, but, it shows that really people haven't really changed that much either. We'd like to think we've evolved into something greater and, become woke or whatever. We've, grew past where we, our ancestors were, but the human condition, sinful condition, hasn't changed very much. It's still the same that it was. But, the good thing about that is that God hasn't changed either. He's still the same. The same as He was, when He spoke this universe into creation with His very words. And He's the same today. He'll be the same 10 million years from now. And we have a peace in that. That when we speak the truth and people do come against us because they like to bring war, they like to bring destruction, they like to bring darkness and lies. When we speak the truth, He's going to be there with us. When we seek peace, He's going to bring us that peace. We have that promise in Him. Psalm 121. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. So we lift our eyes up to Him. We look up to find our Father. And we know that that's where our help is going to come from. We have that hope. We have that peace. That when the waters are troubled or, the fires are burning and the enemy's encamped around us and they've circled around us and it looks bleak and there's no hope, we have that hope in Him. We have that peace that's going to come from Him. But, we have to have our eyes on Him. We have to be seeking Him. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. We have that comfort and peace, and sometimes we forget about that. We always think, well, prayer or reading the Word or seeking the Father's guidance is the last resort when it should be the first thing we go to, because it's always it's where we're going to find the answer. All the answers we're going to find, it's going to be here. It's going to be in this Word. It's going to be in praying, seeking His will. It's going to come through Him. He's going to reveal more of Himself to us, and that's always going to be the answer. We need to go to Him first. He created everything. He spoke it all into existence. And He has the power to move and change things. He can keep us from being moved when we're in the right. When we're in the center of His will, He'll keep us. And the good thing is that it doesn't matter when we call upon Him. because he doesn't sleep. He doesn't slumber. He never takes days off. He doesn't have sick days. He doesn't take vacation. He's always there. He's always present, 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It doesn't matter. He's always there, and he's always wanting to hear from us. There's a wonderful hope and peace and joy that can be found in that we have a 24/7 God. He's always on duty. He's always willing to be there to answer, to help us, to comfort us, to seek us, or to show us what we need when we seek Him to make it through. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. Again, he's always on the clock. He's never off duty. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. He keeps us. He watches out for us. He protects us from the burning heat of the sun. He's our shade. He's our comfort, And when we understand that and we fully surrender to Him, He can be these things to us. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. So, again, this isn't saying that troubles aren't going to come, but it's going to say that they're not going to overwhelm us when we're in Him. We're surrounded by Him because we've got this word in our hearts. It's on our lips. It's in our minds. It's what we think. We breathe this word back out because it's in our heart. We eat this word daily. I've seen somewhere last day or two, somebody put a post up and it said that, that His word is the bread of life, and that it's not a cake for just to be eaten on special occasions, but it's a daily bread that we need to eat daily, constantly. And so, when we're doing that, and when we have that promise, He's going to protect us and lead us. He's going to deliver us, preserve us, and take care of us. Things may happen in this world that may take our bodies away, but our soul's going to be safe in His hands. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. So that means wherever we go, wherever we out to, come back to, wherever it is, as long as we're walking in His will, on His path, He's going to take care of us. He's going to preserve us. He's going to take care of all the needs we have. Spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, financial, whatever it may be. He's everything that we're going to need, and He's going to take care of it, He's not one to come up short. He's not one to run out. He's a bottomless well, of everything that we're ever going to need. Psalm 122. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. This is David writing here again, and David always celebrated when he got to have that chance to come into God's house. He was always excited about that. And the word says that he was a man after God's own heart. So, of course, when he got to go to his father's house and to be in his presence with his fellow brothers and sisters, he got excited about that. There should be some excitement when we come to church. Sometimes life gets busy, we get tired, we get beat down. Just the things of daily life grind us down. We get exhausted, we get tired. But there should be some kind of spark. There should be a joy. There should be a fire burning in your soul that gets you excited when you come to the house of the Lord. There's nothing really special about the four walls and the roof. You could have church anywhere in the middle of a field or whatever it is, but there is something special about a designated place that you set apart, and that you call His house, and then you come together with your brothers and sisters at appointed times and seeking Him, and we need to make sure that we're not just going through the motions, sometimes we are tired, we're wore down, but we should come expecting something every time we show up, it's like we're just coming back home, we're going to our Father's house, coming back into their house after we've been out in the world, and we're returning home. There should be a peace and comfort and joy there, knowing that you're going to meet Him there. He's going to be there waiting with His hands, wide open, arms wide open, ready to hug you and love on you, and we should be the same. We should come running through that door with our arms open saying, hey, God, I'm here, and embrace Him and hug Him. We should have that excitement in our lives. Our feet shall stand within thy gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem is builded as a city that is compact together. So, David here's in 122, he's saying, that Jerusalem had been set apart with God. That was His city. Special things were going to happen there. And he knew that. And he was excited to be back home, to be in Jerusalem, to go to the house of the Lord there, the temple. And, he was just excited about that he knew that God had set that city in order and put it together exactly like he wanted it. And he was excited about that. Whither the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, unto the testimony of Israel, to give thanks unto the name of the Lord. For there are set thrones of judgment, the thrones of the house of David. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, they shall prosper that love thee. Jerusalem was set apart. That's where God put his mark. It was the capital of Israel, and that's, he has his hand there, his heart's there, and his people, should rejoice there. And we need to pray for Jerusalem. It says right here, pray for peace there. Pray that God's will be done there. Because those that bless the Israelites, God's chosen people, he's going to prosper and bless those people. Because we're going to be supporting his people, his will. Of course, we have that blessing also through Jesus Christ, because we were grafted in through his shed blood. So, that should be home to us too, in our spiritual home, to think about that's where God blessed and put his name and his people. And we should pray for them and their peace and, their prosperity. Peace be within thy walls and prosperity within thy palaces. For my brethren and companions' sakes, I will now say, peace be within thee. Because of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek thy good. Psalm 123. Unto thee lift I up mine eyes, O thou that dwellest in the heavens. Behold, as the eyes of servants look unto the hand of their masters, and as the eyes of a maiden unto the hand of her mistress, so our eyes wait upon the Lord our God, until that we have mercy upon us. We do need to lift our eyes up to him. We need to seek him. We should our soul should desire to see him, to want to be in his presence, to be around him. Because he is our Father. He is in control. He has everything under control. Everything is set in order, and he doesn't get caught off guard. There's no surprises to him. He knows everything. And we have that peace there, knowing that he's in total control. Have mercy upon us, O Lord. Have mercy upon us, for we are exceedingly filled with contempt. This world has troubles. It has trials. We're surrounded by all these things. Not everybody around us, places we work and our neighbors or, just out and about doing daily business. Not everybody thinks like we do. They're not seeking God. They don't know him like we do. And they're living in this world. Their God is this world. It may be power. It may be money. It may be whatever it may be, but it's not God. And so there's going to be troubles. There's going to be conflict. But we have hope in him that he's going to have mercy upon us. He's going to lead us through these things. Our soul is exceedingly filled with the scorning of those that are at ease and with the contempt of the proud. It's like Darren says all the time, that little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands. It's like you're at ease, you kind of back away. And some of these people are walking around to sleep because they've never known the Lord. Some people may be backsliders and asleep. There's contempt of the proud. There's people that have never known the Lord or are in complete contradiction to him and living, a proud life out in front, just loud and proud now that are contempt against God. There's going to be people out there like that, but we have to keep the course. We have to keep the faith and keep doing the right things because it's the right thing to do. That's the reason you do the right thing, because it is the right thing. We love God and we love his truth. We're going to seek his will. We're going to do his will. We're going to be obedient, and that's going to bring troubles and trials from this world because, I've talked about it time and time again. It just stays constantly on my mind and in my soul about, that the light and dark cannot coexist. There's either light or there's dark. This world is trying to spread the darkness and, God's people is trying to spread the light. So it's going to be at odds against each other. But we can't give up because we know that, in time, Jesus is going to come back and the light's going to win. We have to keep the good fight up until he comes back and be watching and waiting and working while he's coming. We have to do the best we can to prepare this place for him to come back. And to do that, we have to be prepared. So we have to know this word. We have to study this word. We have to seek him and be in his will. Psalm 124. If it had not been the Lord who was on our side, now may Israel say, if it had not been the Lord who was on our side when men rose up against us. So just another Psalm of David here, and he's giving God credit and praise, saying, if God hadn't have been on our side, where would we be? That's a thought we can take today. If you'd have never met the Lord, where would you be right now? I think about that and all the things that he's done in my life and where he's brought me from. And, I couldn't guarantee that I'd be standing here today if it hadn't been for him. I'd probably be in the ground somewhere, and my body would be, and my soul would probably be in eternal torments without the Lord, Without him and him showing up and taking care and providing and giving us that way to him through his son, Jesus Christ, we'd all be in bad shape. We'd all be pitiful. We'd all have the hope of this world, and that would be all that we would have. And that's why there's so much sadness out there. There's so much darkness that people don't know the truth. They don't know the hope that God has and what he can deliver us and what he can do for us. Verse 3, then they had swallowed us up quick when their wrath was kindled against us. Then the waters had overwhelmed us, the stream had gone over our soul. Then the proud waters had gone over our soul. So David's saying, the enemies would have swallowed them up. Their wrath would have been kindled. They'd have destroyed them. They'd have come over them like a flood and overwhelmed them. And they'd have ate up Israel and swallowed them whole. If it hadn't have been for God delivering them, protecting and standing up for them, that he delivered their souls, he saved them. Blessed be the Lord, who hath not given us as a prey to their teeth. Our soul is escaped as a bird out of the snare of the fowlers. The snare is broken, and we are escaped. When we get ourselves in a situation where it looks hopeless and there's bleak, that there's no physical way we're possibly going to be delivered or taken out of this place and saved. God has a tendency to show up and save us. He has a way to deliver. Just like the example here, that a bird that's been trapped in a snare from the fowlers are trying to catch the bird. Well, the snare was broken and the bird escaped. It's just like we are. The enemy's out here roaming to and fro like a hungry, roaring lion, seeking whom he can devour and kill. But the Lord's out there to defend us. The Lord can put a David in the way to kill that lion, to slay that Goliath. He can lead us to a safe place out of the path of the enemy. He can deliver and save us, and he does when we're in his will and we seek him. But we can't expect him to deliver us when we're living any old way. We can't, tempt the Lord and provoke him, to his wrath and say, well, I can do whatever I want, but you have to take care of me. It doesn't exactly work that way. You can't be out there doing all these dangerous things, gambling with your life and your soul, and on the other hand say, well, you have to take care of me. That's not how the things go. It's not how it works. Satan tried to tempt Jesus that way by telling him to leap off the Temple Mount, and he said, you don't tempt the Lord thy God. And, that's something we have to do. You have to, don't roll the dice with your soul. Don't play the games. Don't say, well, I'm going to call a timeout and I can go and sneak and do this. That's not how things work. And of course the spirit that lives within you is going to tell you not to do that anyway. You have a warning system. We have that in the Holy Ghost, that it warns us about these things, and it takes our minds back to this word, to this truth, just like Christ always did when Satan was in front of him. He used the word against him. He was just saying, it is written, and this God's word says, and that's what we need to do, and keep ourselves straight on the straight and narrow path, and stay in his blessing where he can deliver us. Verse 8, our help is in the name of the Lord who made heaven and earth. You think about that. Our help is in the name of the Lord. Well, what is a name? A name is that what designates, what that person is, who that is. If that's why we have names. So when we talk about something, we can say, hey, if you say Daniel, you're talking to me. If you say Susan, you're talking to my wife. So that when we say the Lord, then that's, that invokes him and who he is. When we call out and we cry out his name, then that gets his attention and he turns to us, when he understands. And that he is our help. You think about it in life, if we all stood up and told a testimony of something the Lord has done for us, I guarantee you that, he's gonna cover every single base. That he's provided financially for us when there was no way. There's somebody that he's helped physically and healed, and he's moved in some kind of medical way and been a doctor and moved when the doctors couldn't do anything, and there's been a way that he's just made of an escape, and he's protected, he's shielded us, from enemies and physical attacks and wrecks and this and that. There's so many things that he's done, that he's everything, that he can do all things, for us when we're in his will and in his way. And we need to praise him for that. Sometimes we fall short. We get a little spoiled because he is so good to us. That it's easy to forget and let some of this stuff slip by, but we need to do a better job of that. And I'm saying me too here, talking to me. There's things that, I should say, Lord, I know that was you, and I didn't quite say thank you enough for that. We need to make sure we take time to do that and just thank him and praise his name. And, that's where he gets his joy, knowing that we respect him and that we fear him and that we love him for who he is and what he does and what he can do. Psalm 125. They that trust in the Lord shall be as Mount Zion, which cannot be removed, but abideth forever. So when we trust in him, we're going to be in his will. We're going to be under his wing. We're going to be under his hand. Who can move God? Who can move what he's put into motion and set up? There's nothing can fight against him. He's undefeatable force. There's nothing can come against him and defeat him. When we're in his will and under his protection, we're the same, because he's fighting for us. It's not us. As the mountains are round about Jerusalem, so the Lord is round about his people from henceforth, even forever. So, he's like I said, he's a defense, he's a shield. He's like a city that's got mountains around it to protect it. It's just a great physical barrier that the enemy can't overwhelm and can't get to. Spiritually, God's the same way with us. If we're walking in his will, whoever comes against us has to go through him to get to us. And if we stay in him, they can't get us. Now if we slip out and try to go take care of it ourselves, then we open ourselves up to them. That's something I have to work on sometimes. Because I want to say, well, I'm going to take care of this because I need it done now. And I get out there, make a big mess out of it and get myself in trouble. But when I wait and pray about it and let Lord lead me in it, then it's done in his time and his will, and it's taken care of. That's something that, I know I could do better at. And, truthfully, maybe we all could do just a little better with that. We can always get just a little bit closer, and that's the wonderful thing about him. There's so much there, and so, he can always just love you a little more and give you a little more joy and a little more peace. And it just, no matter how much you get, there's always more. And there's a peace in him in that, and just a wonderful, we thank God for that. He's a wonderful God. Verse 3, for the rod of the wicked shall not rest upon the lot of the righteous, lest the righteous put forth their hands unto iniquity. So it's right here, those that fight against us, the enemy and the wicked, they can't bring all their wrath and their destruction upon us. It says, lest the righteous put forth their hands into iniquity. So right there it says, if we stay under his word and under his protection, under the Father's will, then the enemy can't get to us. But when we slip up and we slide out and we reach out and grab something we're not supposed to, we put our hands in iniquity. That just means we turn our hearts away from God. We turn it back to this world, and we let that one little thing slide back in. That's a way the enemy can get in, because we've moved ourselves away from God. It's not that he's moved and went anywhere. It's that we've moved away. We put our hands back into the sin pot. We reached out and got something that got our hands dirty. That wasn't God's doing. He didn't move away from us. We moved away from him. And so, when we do that, then we open ourselves up. And that is why this is a close and tight way. Some people say, do you really need to pray that much? Or do you really need to study this word that much? Or do you really need to go to church that much? And once or twice a month is good. And it's like, yeah, but, 6 or 7, 8, 9 times a month is better. You can't get close enough to him. And when you start sliding back a little bit, that opens up those cracks in that defense. because you're opening that door to sin. And, we got to keep that door closed. God closed it for us. Don't open it back up. Let him leave it closed. Stay away from all that stuff. Verse 4, do good, O Lord, unto those that be good, and to them that are upright in their hearts. We have to do our part too. We can't just use him as a backup plan or put him on the shelf until we get in deep trouble and then pull him off the shelf and throw him back out there and say, hey, I did this mess, got to fix it now. That's what a little small child does. When we grow up and we're supposed to be mature, we have to make those decisions on our own and understand to be responsible and say, hey, God doesn't want me to do this. I need to stay away from this. Or, hey, this needs to be done. The Lord needs me to do this. Stand up and do it. He shouldn't have to stand right over top of us and, with a stick and keep tapping us on the shoulder and saying, hey, keep doing this, keep doing this. He showed us what to do. We need to do that, If we know to do good, we need to do it. The Bible says if we know to do good and don't do it, it's a sin. So, when he teaches us and shows us something, we need to pick up with that. We need to keep doing it. Just like a good parent, he's going to show us the way, he's going to teach us. He's going to correct us when we're small, so that hopefully, we're going to grow up and mature and we'll be able to make those decisions on our own and he don't have to keep telling us the same thing over and over again. Well, that's happened with me a lot. I'm sure I'm stubborn and hard-headed sometimes and, he has to keep telling me the same things over and over. I'm sure he gets aggravated, but thank God for his mercy and his grace, that he has upon us. We just need to be good kids. He's a good father. We need to be good kids. And of course, just like, parents are, it doesn't matter how old the kid gets, they're still their baby. So, we could be 90, 100 years old in this, and God's still going to look at us as his child. So, he's infinite in time. So even if we are 120, that's still a baby to him because he's always has been there. You can't put an age or time on him. So, but we need to be good kids. He's a good father. As for such as turn aside unto their crooked ways, the Lord shall lead them forth from the workers of iniquity, but peace shall be upon Israel. So, those that turn away, he's going to divide them. He's going to divide the goats from the sheep. He's going to divide the good and the bad. Those that want to work for an iniquity and work for the devil and work for this world or themselves, they're going to be separated. They're going to be turned away to their own lusts and enticements. But those that seek him and seek his peace, he's going to bless them with those peace. He's going to deliver them. He's going to take us that are following him, that are seeking him and trying to do their best. He's going to separate the dark and the light. Like I said, they can't coexist. He's going to take care of that. He's going to deliver those that serve him. There's going to be peace and joy found in him. He's never going to lead us anywhere other than closer to him. That's the thing. And that's the sad part about this world. This world keeps trying to find another way. This world wants to find, because they look and they say, well, God won't let me do this anymore, and he won't let me do that. It's because it's bad. It's hurting you. It's harmful for you. All these bad habits you have and the sins and the things you do in this world that's contrary to the word, they may seem fun, but it's a fleshly fun. It's not a spiritual thing, and they're bad for you. They're going to lead you down a wrong path. They're leading you away from God. Everything he's going to do is reveal more of himself to you. He's going to give you more of him, more of his son, Jesus Christ, more of his Holy Spirit, more of his word. And it's spiritual, deep things that mean something, All the pleasures of this world, fleshly things, they're going to stop at some point in time. When your body dies and you take that last breath and your soul separated from your body, all the worldly, physically things are dead. They're not going to matter anything at all to you anymore. But the spiritual things are going to be what matters. That relationship you have with God, that relationship you have with Jesus Christ, and the Spirit, and the work that you did for the Lord out of love and to help other people. That stuff's going to be the stuff that matters. That's going to be the stuff that's going to, count, at judgment time. That's the stuff that's going to stand, the stuff that you did in obedience to God and his will. And, the workers of iniquity, they're not going to have anything to stand on. And those that were saved are going to be standing on Christ. And that's blunt, but it's straightforward, but that's how it is. There's no other thing, there's no other way. This world can't offer you anything that's going to last. The only thing that's going to last is Christ and that relationship you have with him, and he's going to lead you to the Father. Psalm 126. When the Lord turned again the captivity of Zion, we were like them that dream. Then was our mouth filled with laughter, and our tongue with singing. Then said they among the heathen, the Lord hath done great things for them. So, this is a song singing about, when God had delivered the children of Israel again from the hands of the enemy in captivity. We talked about that several times before. You go back through the Old Testament, they had this cycle that they would have a generation that would follow the Lord, and they were doing the things that he asked them to do, and he blessed, and they grew, and they were flourishing. And then that next generation or so would kind of get soft because they grew up with everything easy, and they started seeking this world and wanting more and more. They got a little spoiled, and so they turned away from God. So the enemies came in because God removed his blessings from them because they turned away from him, and the enemies came in, conquered them, put them in chains and captivity. And then, after a generation or two, they started remembering, hey, we used to have this good. Our grandparents were free, and they did this and that, and the Lord blessed them, and, our parents turned away, and if we turn back to God, maybe he'll deliver us. And this is a situation here where, God had delivered them from captivity, and they've turned back home, and that generation that sought him and fought and done the right things, he blessed them again. So they were having peace again, And of course, as that cycle goes, you have a generation that has it easy, and then they turn away, and then the next generation has to have it hard and fight to get back what the previous generation gave up. That's a spiritual battle too, and that's why it is so important that we have to teach our children. We have to teach our grandchildren. We have to do the best we can to show them the truth. And the best way to do that is to live that truth. That old saying, do as I say, not as I do, is garbage. You can't tell a kid, to live a certain way and do a certain thing, and then you live different in front of them, because they're going to see that, and they're going to say, well, you're a hypocrite. So that means that it's not the truth. They're not going to live it. And so you have to do the best you can. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to make mistakes. But when you do make those mistakes, you need to show those children how to correct those things. Like, hey, I messed up, I stumped my toe, I went and prayed about it, and we're going to, God forgave me, I'm going to move on. When the kids make mistakes, you got to tell them the same thing. Hey, I still love you because you messed up. That doesn't mean I'm going to throw you away, but, we got to correct this. And we just have to do the best that we can with that, and, hope it sets in, and live the best we can in front of them, and hope that sets in for them, because we can't live it for them. We got to live it for ourselves. When they see that we're true, then they'll see that that's the truth, and they'll want to be that way too. So again, we just have to break that cycle and stop. When God's blessing us and he's done good for us, keep praising him and thanking him for that, and keep working, and keep doing and keep being obedient to his word and doing what he asks us to do, and show our kids that that's why we do have it good. God's blessed us because we were obedient, and it's nothing we've done of ourselves, it's him. All the good things in this world are from God. The Lord hath done great things for us, whereof we are glad. Turn again our captivity, O Lord, as the streams in the south. They that sow in tears shall reap in joy. There we have a piece right here. That's why I do love these Psalms, and there's so much comfort in these, is that verses just like this. They that sow in tears shall reap in joy. When the world beats down on us, it closes in, and it feels like we're about to be crushed, and we're crying out to God, and we're asking him, hey, I don't understand this situation. I don't know why I'm here, or maybe we do know. Maybe we said, hey, I've made bad choices. I've got myself in this mess. But you know what? I know how I can get out of this, Father. I know you can deliver me. But when we cry out to him, our heart cries out, and we're true, and we're honest with him, and we put the work in, and when we do what we got to do to repent and to say, hey, I messed up, or this enemy's here, and this is real, and I need you, and we're being honest with him, and we're giving him our heart, those tears are going to open doors. It's going to open up heaven. It's going to get to the Father. He's going to hear us, and he's going to deliver, And we sow in tears, we'll reap in joy, because he's not gonna turn away an honest heart that's seeking him. He's not gonna do that, because that's not who he is, because he wants us. But that's the thing, we have to come honestly to him. We can't come with playing games and we can't come, well, I just want to feel a little better about this. We have to seek Him. We have to want Him. And we have to want Him wholeheartedly. When we do that, He's going to open the door and He's going to bring us in. Like I said, when we sow in tears, we'll reap in joy. And that joy is going to be in Him. Because like I said, He's always going to show us more of Him. He's never going to give us anything less than Him, because He's going to give us the best. And there's nothing better than Him. So it's always going to be more of Him. And that joy is going to be Him. It's going to be more of His presence. It's going to be more of His Word, more of His Son, more of His Spirit. It's going to be more of Him. He that goeth forth and weepeth, bearing precious seed, shall doubtless come again with rejoicing, bringing his sheaves with him. And again, this world, it's hard. It's a hard life, but, we have a promise that if we keep doing the work, we keep sowing the seed, we keep watering it, we keep moving forward, we keep being obedient to Him, that there's going to be a harvest. He's going to deliver. There's going to be there's that prize at the end of the race. If you keep running and you keep fighting, you might fall down, you might stumble, you get back up and you dust yourself off and you keep running. As long as you cross the finish line, there's going to be a prize. It's going to be heaven. It's going to be Him. There's going to be that harvest. If you go out there and you till the ground, you put the seed in and you water it, and you keep the bugs off, you keep weeding it, and you keep taking care of it, when the time's right, there's going to bring forth the fruit. It's going to have a harvest. It's just like that with God. When we have that relationship, we put the work in, where there's going to be reward at the end. And there's going to be rewards through that journey too, because He's going to bless us coming and going. We read about that earlier. And that's the great thing about Him. There's no end to His blessings. He's just going to keep on blessing left and right, straight up the middle, here and there. He's going to surround us with more of Himself. And the more we have of Him, the more joy we're going to have. It's just, it's a beautiful thing. That balance in the Lord. Psalm 127. Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh but in vain. So what we have here is, I kind of touched on that earlier, and I can't seem to get away from this idea, that no matter what you do in this life, the wealth that you build, the power, the titles, the relationships that you have, the homes, the possessions that you make, you can build a giant empire, a worldly empire, and you're building in vain because you can't take it with you. These worldly, earthly things, the pleasures of this life, of this world that it has to offer, they're empty. They're just shells, And I'm not saying that you can't have things, nobody's saying that. But to try to measure your worth and how much you're worth of this world, it's in vain. It's there because, you can't take all this stuff with you. So anything that you build up that isn't, through the Lord, it's not for His work, it's not for His will, you're building in vain. You could build a great and giant city, but, if it's not of the Lord, this world's going to tear it down. Anything you build here, you can't take with you. It's going to rot. It's going to break. It's going to crumble at some point in time. It's going to decay. But the spiritual things of this life, that you do, the work you put in and the love that you have and the work that you do in obedience and submission to the God, that's the important things. 2, it is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows, for so He giveth His beloved sleep. Again, digging back into that, eat the bread of sorrows, that goes back to when Adam and Eve got kicked out of the Garden of Eden for their sin, their disobedience to God, eating of the forbidden fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. They got kicked out, and He told Adam that he was going to have to eat from the sweat of his brow. And so that would be the bread of sorrows. So for us to devote our whole life just to work, to get up early and go try to make some more money, to stay up late just to make more money, to stack that money up. Now that's not saying not to provide for your family. We need to work. Work is good. But when work becomes your God, when it becomes your life, when that 20 million you've got in the bank is not enough and you want to add another 20 million to it just so you can say you got 40 million. That love of money is the root of all evil. not the money itself. So that's not what we're saying here. Don't work. That's not what we're saying. But when work becomes your life, when work becomes your God, that's vain. And there's no point in that. You need to take some time and rest. God gives his people sleep. He gives us rest, It says, so for he giveth his beloved sleep. He's going to provide for you and give you enough. If you trust in him, he's going to lead you where you need to be. And, if you got a roof over your head, your family's there together under that same roof with you, and you had enough to eat that day and your clothes on your back, you've got enough. You don't have to worry about making that $50 million or whatever that goal may be. Don't let money be your God. Verse 3, Lo, children are an heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. So, children are supposed to be that blessed, but they're supposed to be a heritage of the Lord. Well, what does that mean? Well, he gives them to us. We're supposed to give them back to him. We got to train them up the right way. We have to teach them. They can be a heritage to our family and who we are and our family, yes, but they need to be his heritage too. We're children of God. We need our children to be his children too. We got to raise them up the right way. We got to have them in church. We have to teach them the Bible. We have to teach them the right ways. And like I said before, the way to do that is going to be that you're living it in front of them. You're living it before them and you're showing them. And they're living it with you. As arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are children of the youth. Happy is the man that hath his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but they shall speak with the enemies in the gate. So again, children are a blessing that God can give, and those that have many are blessed. And you have to take that responsibility greatly and seek him and continue to turn those children into good, God-fearing, productive people in society that are going to be out there working and doing and living the Christ-like lives to lead others to him. And so that's a responsibility we have to do, and there should be a joy and peace in that. Fighting that battle and shining that light and teaching the children to be able to fight and how to pray and how to seek God and to seek his will also. Those are blessings. So, let's see here. It's probably a good place we'll stop today. But, just looking forward at this and what we're studying here, it's just we have to keep God first. We have to keep him in front of us. He's going to fight the battles. He's going to deliver us. He's a good father. We need to be good children. We need to be obedient children, and to do that, we have to know what the rules are. He tells us, he teaches us, he corrects us. We need to take that correction with love and love that correction because he's teaching us. He's teaching us how to be men and women of God. He's teaching us how to be productive, to be lights in this world, in this dark place. And, if we let him, he'll lead us, and if not, we'll lead ourselves to destruction, or we'll let him lead us to heaven. And that's the two choices that we have. So, let him be a good father, and we need to be the good children to him.